Hi, I'm Sarah and welcome to Voice Science. In today's episode, we're talking about the Aussie accent. But before we jump right in, you might be wondering, what do I even know about it? Fair enough. Fair question. Well, firstly, I'm Australian. Secondly, I live in Melbourne, Australia. And thirdly, I'm a speech pathologist who has assisted thousands of clients to learn the rules of Aussie English. And to wrap it all up, I'm also an opera singer who personally had to remove my own Australian accent when singing so that I can pronounce my operatic languages correctly. So, yes, I guess you can say I know a lot about the Aussie accent, and I can't wait to share the core principles you need if you want to move your English speaking closer to Aussie pronunciation. Before we get into our topic, make sure you check the blog post that goes with this tutorial. Check it out over on our website. I've linked it below just for you. Important disclaimer. The Aussie accent is not the only way to speak English. In fact, in Australia we have numerous different forms of English pronunciation, and I'd argue that all of them are as legitimate and official as each other. Your speaking is not inferior if you live in Australia and you don't have an Aussie accent. Currently, in fact, there are more non-native speakers of English than native, so no one can tell you that using an Aussie accent is the only correct way to speak if you live in Australia. But then, what if you like the accent? If that's the case and you want to add it more to your speaking, what do you really need to know about Aussie pronunciation if you're loving it and want to get it out more? Well, firstly, Aussie English is not one fixed way of speaking. While speakers share similar pronunciation rules, you'll hear loads of variation in how people pronounce things, even if they're all using an Australian accent. These variations can include, and are not limited to, different voice qualities. We all use our voice differently. Some people use healthier voice quality. Some people use rough and croaky. Typically, mainstream Australian English can have a lot of vocal fry, but that doesn't mean that everyone uses it. I personally don't use a lot of fry or croaky sound because I want to create a healthy, energetic sound when I speak, so voice quality really matters to me. Listen for voice quality variations. Start to think about what kind of Australian voices do you like, who you enjoy listening to on the news, the radio, in podcasts, and start listening. The next thing that we hear a lot of variation in among Australian mainstream speakers is differing levels of nasality. Throughout the country, you'll hear different nasal qualities. Some of this can be dependent upon where the speaker grew up or even family influence. In other cases, it can also depend upon some factors around the person's nasal cavity or even speaking habits. In Australia, you'll hear speakers who are hypernasal. I'll give you an example. I live in Melbourne. Here, the speaker uses lots of nasal vibration. I live in Melbourne. Secondly, you might also hear hyponasal. I live in Melbourne. Here, you hear slightly reduced nasal vibration. And finally, some speakers use a mix of oral and nasal resonance. I live in Melbourne. There, we hear a balance between the mouth cavity and the nasal passageway as we emit the sound when speaking. Now, these speaking qualities will affect your perception of the Aussie accent and can account for why you might personally prefer certain speakers over others. Here's the question. What kind of nasality mix do you personally prefer? Let me know in the comments below. Also, it's really good to consider what are the nasality features of your first language or even your own personal way of speaking. Are you inclined to use lots of nasality or less nasality? If you're not sure, this is something that our team will check in your personalised pronunciation audit. We'll analyse how effectively you manipulate your nasal vibration and your mouth cavity vibration. This area of assessment is particularly important for speakers from languages that have specific nasal vowel needs like French, Hindi, or even Portuguese. It's important to note that Aussie English doesn't have nasal vowels, but we can sound really nasal at times. And in case you're wondering, in most cases, degrees of nasality actually can be changed via resonant voice therapy. Next up, we want to talk about formality. Formality really matters in the Aussie accent. In the Australian accent, you can hear one speaker really vary up their speech patterns according to who they're talking to and what they want to achieve in their conversation. I'm sure you know that when you speak your first language, your pronunciation may adjust a bit for differing environments. You may use more precise speaking with your boss than with your best mate. In the case of Aussie English, we can see some large differences between pronunciation that link to formality. Conversational English in an informal social interaction is more likely for many speakers to move toward the broad Australian accent. We may hear less precise consonants, longer vowel durations, increased nasality, and changes in voice quality. Whereas in the formal space, that speaker may sound entirely different, but importantly still, Australian. I often get asked where I'm from because I seldom drop into the super informal broad Australian accent. Although I know the rules for it, I wasn't ever really raised in a house with good role models. My mum speaks very clearly and formally, and my dad is a little bit broader, but he has more of a general accent than totally broad. This can account for why you may sometimes misunderstand your colleagues. If you're used to hearing a clear and cultivated, formal manner of speaking, when your colleagues switch to small talk or pass a fast phrase, it's easy to lose the gist due to some Aussie pronunciation features that emphasise the broad Aussie accent. It's important, therefore, to think about what styles of Aussie English speaking you understand well. Increase your listening opportunities and exposure to different speakers in Australia, and make sure you balance out your professional speaking manner and informal speaking manner. When you consider your goals for incorporating more Aussie pronunciation, don't forget that informal, social ways of speaking can be a really great tool to build rapport and mutuality with your listener. You don't need to sound Aussie to make friends. You don't need to sound Aussie to have influence. But if you like the Aussie accent and you want to use it, commit to learning the sounds of cultivated formal and informal broad speaking. Tip number 3, another really important thing you need to know about the Aussie accent is that you can kind of change up your vowels and consonants a lot when you play with the accent. At Voice Science, our team loves to show you all the little tricky details that make up Aussie English. An Aussie accent is the product of a balanced symphony of specific sounds. The challenge is that now you know that formality matters, you'll then also hear one speaker say the same word differently according to the context, or who they're speaking to, or even the position of the word in the sentence. The formal language that we use in the Australian workplace setting is actually less formal than you might expect. Less formal than English-speaking textbooks. So it's really important to decrease your formality perhaps, start inserting more contractions and playing with the tone and manner at work. Aussie accents tend to modify the following pronunciation features as follows. Vowel durations. At times we might shorten, de-stress, or lengthen specific vowel sounds. We can also modify consonants. We do delete certain sounds, especially the sounds at the ends of words, like the letter T or the letter R. Take care though, don't go deleting everything left, right and centre to sound Australian, or you may lose the most important thing in your speaking, your clarity. There's no point adjusting your speaking in any direction if you lose your clarity. This is why it's important to work with someone who can teach you all the rules for Aussie English and monitor your message transfer so that you can still sound amazing and convincing. Language choice and structure can also really vary drastically with mainstream Aussie English. This will really impact on formality, manner and tone. For example, I could say, "Do you want a coffee?" Or, "Do you want a coffee?" Or, "Shall we have a coffee?" Notice the differences just by virtue of word choice. My final point is that the Aussie accent is actually really hard to learn. And it can also really hurt when people ask, "What did you say? Huh? What was that?" Or, "I didn't catch you, mate." But don't let it get you down, and definitely don't stop speaking or participating. There are so many reasons why someone might ask you to repeat yourself, so give yourself a little credit. Don't assume that every time they ask what you said, it was due to your pronunciation. There are moments when your listener won't understand you because of things like dropping focus and attention, background noise, increased listening pressure. It's not always your fault. In fact, I don't think it's ever your fault. Communicating effectively relies on more things than your pronunciation. Communicating effectively relies on more things than your pronunciation. It takes teamwork, so take care of yourself and don't put all the burden and responsibility on yourself to minimize communication stress. And look, if you're stuck, you might like to consider the High Performance Communication Audit from our team at Voice Science. This is a wonderful alternative and option for you if you think things are going on with your communication that could be improved, but that don't relate to your pronunciation clarity. The High Performance Communication Audit looks into your communication agility and identifies what's holding you back in terms of your voice tone, your expression, your language usage and message, and even your interpersonal skills. It's nothing to do with pronunciation and everything to do with practical communication strategy that, hey, we all need at times. I've linked the audit below for you, so make sure you check it out. And if you think you need to work on things separate to pronunciation, feel free to ask me any questions you have about that audit or which would be the best path for you at Voice Science. In wrapping up, you might also like to subscribe to our channel. Make sure you turn notifications on for all our posts to stay up to date with the bonus content that we generally pump out weekly. And then scoot across to our Facebook and Instagram for daily communication tips. You can find us under Voice Science. Your voice and your message matter drastically. Share your thoughts and insights without fear, no matter how clear or unclear you are. Thank you so much for watching this vlog. I hope it's given you some actionable and new insights into the amazing Aussie accent. See you next time. Ciao. Want to get started on improving your word stress for English? Your personalised pronunciation audit is the first step. Make sure you check it out over on our website. It's your chance to learn which one of the 6 bottlenecks to pronunciation clarity you need to overcome right now so you can speak English with more confidence and comfort. This is your first step to improving your speaking. How can you do the practice right for your speaking if you don't know which sounds need the work most? Over the past 6 years, I've custom engineered a foolproof audit for the thousands of clients I meet daily who want to improve their English. And guess what? You can do the first part of this audit right now, no matter where you are. Click the link below to enroll and get to the bottom of what your pronunciation needs to progress. I can't wait to meet you, to help you and support you. Cadenza. Elevate. Communicate.